Ben Carter's boots crunched against the crust of fresh snow as he hiked deeper into the pine-thick wilderness of northern Colorado. His breath curled into the frozen air, rifle slung over one shoulder, eyes scanning for elk tracks. This was his quiet place. Out here it was just him and Max, his old bloodhound with cloudy eyes but an unshakable nose. The world was quieter out here. No people, no ghosts, just the cold. Until Max stopped. His body stiffened. "What is it, boy?" Ben muttered. Max let out a low growl and darted off the trail, paws thudding heavily into the powder. Ben followed, heart thumping with the sudden shift in energy. Max never did this without cause. 30 yards into the thicket, Ben spotted it. Movement near a broken tree stump. A dark shape huddled in the snow. Not an elk, not a fox. A dog. A German shepherd, rail-thin, trembling violently, chained to a rotting post. Its fur was matted with ice and filth, and one eye was nearly swollen shut. But it didn't bark, didn't move. It just stared at Ben, silent. Ben lowered his rifle. "What the hell?" The shepherd's ears flicked at his voice, but it didn't growl or flinch. Only its shallow, uneven breathing betrayed the life still left in it. Max sniffed cautiously, then, shockingly, sat beside the shepherd, whimpering. He never did that, never. Ben approached slowly. "Hey, you're not wild, are you?" The shepherd didn't respond, but as Ben got closer, he saw something else. Its front paw was twisted in a cruel snare, likely set for wildlife. The metal had dug deep, blood frozen into the snow beneath it. But no sound, no struggle, just that same desperate silence. Ben swore under his breath and knelt down. The dog tensed. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." He reached for the snare with gloved hands, working quickly despite the cold. The dog didn't resist. When the metal finally gave, the shepherd collapsed against him. Ben caught it just in time. It was all ribs and bones. Someone had left this dog to die. Not recently either. This had taken days. Back at the cabin, he laid the shepherd on a fleece blanket near the fireplace. Max lay close by, protective, like he already knew this dog was one of them. Ben poured lukewarm broth into a bowl and held it near the shepherd's nose. "You hungry?" The dog barely opened its eyes, then slowly nudged forward, licking the broth weakly. Ben watched it, every motion deliberate, slow. Something deep twisted in his gut. He hadn't felt that in a long time. Not since. He shut the thought down. That night, he wrapped the shepherd in another layer of blankets. Snow beat against the windows like fists, wind howling across the mountain. But inside, it was warm. Alive. When Ben sat down to eat his own dinner, the shepherd lifted its head slightly and let out a small, broken sound. Barely audible. But it was the first time it had made any noise. Ben walked over and crouched beside it. "You got a name?" he asked. The dog stared back, then slowly nudged his hand with its snout. Ben hesitated, then whispered, "Rex. I think you look like a Rex." The dog blinked once. He didn't know it yet, but that moment, right there, would be the first crack in a wall he'd spent years building around himself. And what Rex brought with him wasn't just pain. It was a past buried, and a future hunted. Outside, hidden beneath the drift of snow, a small black GPS tracker blinked red, still active. Someone out there was looking for Rex, and they weren't coming to rescue him. By the next morning, Rex was standing. Not fully steady, but standing. Max circled him once, tail low but friendly, as if passing some kind of torch. Ben Carter poured more broth into a bowl and sat on the floor across from the two dogs. Rex didn't approach, but his eyes never left Ben's. There was something sharp behind them, like calculation, like memory. Ben had seen that look before, in Marines who made it home but never really came back. After a quick breakfast and a radio check with the ranger station, he told them he'd be off-grid for a few days. Ben loaded his truck. The dogs climbed into the back. Max first, Rex with a slow, deliberate effort that showed more pride than strength. They headed into town. Pine Ridge was a place where everybody knew everyone's business, but not everyone cared. The town had a bait shop, a bar, a diner that doubled as a post office, and one vet clinic run by a cranky old widow named Dr. Marianne Rhodes. As soon as Ben pushed the clinic door open, a small bell rang and Rex froze, head tilted, tense. "It's okay," Ben muttered, giving his leash a gentle tug. Marianne looked up from behind the desk. "Ben Carter, you bring me another wild thing with a bullet wound, I swear." Her voice stopped when she saw Rex. Her brow furrowed. "Where did you find him?" "Near Devil's Drop. He was chained. Trap on the paw. Starving." She walked around the desk and knelt, reaching for Rex's side. Rex didn't growl, didn't flinch, but his body stiffened like stone. "This isn't just a stray," she said, running her fingers over his ribs. "There's a scar near the shoulder. Surgical, military style." Ben crouched beside her. "That what I think it is?" She nodded. "Microchip." She fetched a scanner from the back and passed it over Rex's neck. Beep. Her face changed immediately. She read the screen again. "Well, I'll be damned," she whispered. "Name's Rex, registered to a federal handler, Sergeant Luke Whitaker, Special K-9 Unit. Status, deceased." Ben blinked. "Deceased like?" "Handler presumed KIA in an explosion near El Paso last year. Rex listed as lost in action." She looked up at Ben. "This dog isn't just trained. He's one of them." Ben sat back on his heels. "Why the hell would someone leave him chained to a tree?" Marianne shook her head. "Maybe he saw something he wasn't supposed to." Rex let out a low growl. Ben's gut twisted. He looked at Marianne. "Keep this off the books. You're asking me to hide a federal asset. I'm asking you to protect a survivor." She nodded once. "You got 48 hours. After that, someone's going to come looking, if they aren't already." On the drive back, Ben noticed something strange. A black SUV was parked along the road outside town. Windows tinted. Engine off. Not local. Not anyone from Pine Ridge. He didn't slow down, but he watched the side mirror long after the SUV disappeared behind the trees. Back at the cabin, Ben made a fire. Rex lay near it, eyes still tracking every move. That night, Ben couldn't sleep. Something about this was off. Military canines don't just get forgotten, especially not ones like Rex. And if the government had lost track of him, why hadn't anyone come for him? He stepped outside to clear his head. The wind was picking up. Then he saw it. Tire tracks. Fresh. Leading up the hill about 50 yards from the cabin. Then looping back. He hadn't driven there. Someone had. He went back inside and grabbed his shotgun. Rex was already standing, ears perked. He looked at Ben, not with fear, with understanding. Ben whispered, "You feel it too, don't you?" The next day, Ben drove to a friend's place. Lara Hastings, an ex-investigative journalist turned conspiracy podcaster with more tech in her shed than most police departments. When he arrived, Lara was soldering something to a drone. "You look like hell," she said, glancing at Rex. And that dog looks like he's ready to testify in front of Congress. Ben didn't waste time. He told her everything. Lara's brows shot up. You're telling me this dog, this Rex, survived an op that took out an entire unit and just showed up in the woods near your cabin? Ben nodded. She pulled him inside and booted up her system. A minute later, she had a map up, coordinates, and old press clippings. El Paso blast, January last year. Official story, safe house hit by cartel rocket. No survivors. But there were anomalies. Like what? She clicked through photos. 1. The blast radius didn't match the weapon type. 2. The files on the team went dark a week before. 3. Encrypted comms logged activity 36 hours after the supposed explosion. Ben leaned in. Meaning what? Meaning someone's lying. And if Rex made it out, maybe he wasn't supposed to. She scrolled again. Wait, look at this. A grainy still from a traffic cam. A dog. Big. German Shepherd. Walking down a highway shoulder near Santa Fe. 3 months after the blast. Ben whispered. He walked here. Lara stared at the screen, then at Rex. He's not just a survivor, Ben. He's a witness. That night, Ben was back at the cabin, sitting by the fire, trying to make sense of it all. He stared at Rex. What did you see? He asked softly. Rex just looked back, and something in that gaze made Ben shiver. Then a sound outside. A branch. Snapped. Ben stood instantly. Rex was already moving, silent, low to the ground, eyes locked on the door. Ben grabbed his shotgun and moved to the window. Nothing. Then, headlights. Distant. Approaching. Too slow to be a local. Too smooth to be hunting gear. Ben didn't wait. He flicked off the lights and motioned to Rex. Back room. Now. They moved fast. Ben opened the gun safe, handed Rex one of Max's old vests, and watched as the dog stood still while he strapped it on like he knew the drill. The truck pulled up outside. Engine cut. Doors opened. Voices, muffled, calm, professional, not thieves, not drunks. Ben looked at Rex. Rex looked back. And then he growled. Not fear. Readiness. Ben nodded once. Whatever they want, we don't give it to them. Outside, a man's voice called out. Mr. Carter, we'd like to ask you a few questions about the animal in your care. Ben didn't answer, and Rex took one step closer to the door, teeth bared, tail steady like a line in the sand. Something had begun, and neither of them was backing down. The knock came again. Louder, more deliberate. Ben kept the shotgun angled just behind the curtain, barrel low but ready. Rex was already at the side of the door, eyes sharp, muscles wound like coiled wire. Not barking, not growling, just waiting. Silent and lethal. Outside, the man spoke again. Mr. Carter, I repeat, we're here on official business. We need to confirm the welfare of a federally tagged asset. Canine designation, Rex. Ben's heart pounded. They knew his name. They knew Rex's name. He leaned slightly toward the door. Who sent you? Department of Homeland Security, the voice replied, clipped and cold. You're in unlawful possession of government property. Open the door or we'll come in. Show me your badge. No answer. Ben waited 5 long seconds, then peeked through the edge of the curtain. 3 men stood outside. No uniforms. All black jackets. One held a small tablet. Another had a concealed holster. Barely visible, but Ben's trained eyes caught it. Not DHS. Contractors. Possibly private intelligence. Definitely not local law. He turned to Rex. They're not who they say they are. Rex didn't move. but his ears twitched. The moment stretched. Then suddenly, one of the men made a move toward the doorknob. Ben stepped back and yelled, "This is private property. You come through that door, I will treat it as a home invasion." They paused, whispered among themselves. Then footsteps, retreating. Ben let out a slow breath, but his finger never left the trigger. Rex didn't relax either. The tires crunched gravel. Ben ran to the back window and saw the SUV reverse down the hill. Then it stopped halfway and idled. They weren't giving up, just regrouping. Ben locked every window, then knelt in front of Rex and whispered, "We need help." That afternoon, Ben drove to a spot outside of town where cell reception returned. He used a burner phone Lara had given him years ago, the kind meant for one call only. She answered on the second ring. "You in trouble?" "They found us." "Who?" "I don't know. They said DHS, but it's not official. They knew Rex's name. Knew mine, too." "Where are you now?" 30 minutes from the cabin. Signal's weak. I can't keep the line open." She paused. "Bring him in. I'll pull the encrypted laptop. We dig deep." Ben hesitated. "That'll put you on their radar. I've been on watch lists since 2012. This dog's the key. I want to know what he saw." 20 minutes later, Ben pulled into Lara's workshop. It was a converted barn, wired with more surveillance than most police stations. Lara opened the door, motioned them in, then slammed it shut. The room smelled like solder and coffee. Wires ran across walls like veins. Screens flickered to life as she tapped a few keys. Rex scanned the room but stayed close to Ben. "All right, soldier," she said, crouching beside Rex. "Let's see what secrets you're carrying." She handed Ben a bowl of water. Rex drank only half before lying down at Ben's feet. Lara went to work. She had mirrored the data from Rex's microchip scan into a secure server. "Let's see what the feds forgot to erase." Files popped up, encrypted, black bar headers. But Lara had software that worked wonders. "This is from a shadow program called Sentinel. Not official military, not even CIA. Subcontracted, black budget." She leaned closer. "Operation name, Cold Ember. Target, suspected cartel warehouse outside El Paso. Intel claimed the building was a front for drug processing and money laundering." She clicked open another file. Team Bravo 2 was deployed. Handler, Sergeant Luke Whitaker. K9, Rex. Status, mission failed. Explosion, all presumed dead. Ben frowned. Why lie about Rex being lost? Lara zoomed in on a section of the file marked Redacted. "This is weird. There's a 30-second blank spot in the satellite feed the night of the explosion. And after that, someone scrubbed the footage from traffic cams across 3 states. Anywhere Rex might have been seen." She clicked again. "There's something else." The room went still as a photo filled the screen. It was grainy, pulled from CCTV. A military van parked in a clearing. Men unloading crates. One man stood apart, talking to someone over a headset. Another was holding Rex's leash. But it wasn't Whitaker. Ben squinted. "That man. I've seen him." "Name's David Cross," Lara said. "Private security. Used to work for a firm called Cronus Global. Mercenaries for hire." She scrolled. "There's a theory they double-crossed the government. Cold Ember was a cover. The warehouse wasn't cartel. It was evidence storage, seized items, including a ledger." Ben tensed. "What kind of ledger?" Lara's voice dropped. "The kind that gets senators and CEOs arrested. Money trails, payoffs, names." Ben stared at Rex. "You're telling me he saw everything?" "He didn't just see it," Lara said. "He might have been the only one who got out alive, and someone's cleaning up loose ends." Ben whispered, "Including him." Just then, an alert flashed across the screen. "Security breach! Drone overhead!" Lara said, pulling up the live feed. Ben looked. A small quadcopter hovered 100 feet away, its camera facing the barn. Lara cursed and slammed the window shut. "They're here!" Ben grabbed Rex's leash. Lara opened a trap door under the workbench. "Go. There's a back road that leads into the hills. I'll wipe the drives." "You sure?" She gave him a wry smile. "Always wanted to know how deep the rabbit hole went? Guess this is my ticket." Ben paused. "Thank you. Protect him, Carter. That dog is carrying more than memories." Ben and Rex vanished into the tunnel as headlights began to glow outside. Rex didn't whine. He didn't look back. He moved with the certainty of someone who had already escaped hell once, and wasn't planning on going back. They reached the tree line before dawn. The old service trail Lara had mentioned curved around the hills like a forgotten scar hidden under dense pine canopy. The air was damp, thick with fog and tension. Ben's breath came steady, years of wilderness training kicking in. He glanced at Rex, who padded beside him in total silence, ears pricked and eyes scanning. Not just alert, anticipating. They hiked for nearly an hour before reaching an abandoned ranger station. Half-collapsed roof, moss-covered sign. But the basement was intact, dry and out of sight. They could rest. Briefly. Ben laid out his gear while Rex curled into the corner, eyes never fully closed. Just watching. Always watching. Ben took out Lara's flash drive and plugged it into his military-grade tablet. The files she'd decrypted contained more than surveillance logs. There were coordinates, names, code names, and incident reports going back nearly a decade. He paused at one file labeled Redacted Class B 1022 Whitaker. Ben clicked. A grainy audio log played. "Confirm full asset destruction. The dog survived the blast. Repeat, German Shepherd is alive. Compromised. Subject was trained in advanced detection protocols. If recovered by public forces, risk of exposure is extreme. Orders confirmed. Neutralize." The timestamp was from 3 days after the mission. Rex was reported dead in. Ben leaned back. "They've been hunting him ever since." Rex lifted his head at the sound of his name in the recording. His ears twitched. Then he growled, low and quiet. Ben muted the audio and looked over. "You remember him, don't you? Whitaker." Rex didn't move, but his body stiffened. Ben opened the last folder. There were stills from bodycam footage, smuggled, not meant for public view. He recognized some faces: Black Ops soldiers, cartel figures, politicians. But one image stood out. Whitaker, shaking hands with David Cross. Ben stared. This wasn't a sting operation. It was a transfer. A deal. And Whitaker had sold Rex out. Suddenly, static buzzed from the walkie at Ben's side. A private frequency. One only he and Lara had shared. Then a faint voice. "They got me. Cross. He's not who you think." A hiss. Then silence. "Lara?" Ben said, clutching the receiver. "Lara, come in!" Nothing. He slammed his fist into the wall. She must have triggered the emergency ping before they took her. But she was alive. For now. Rex was already on his feet, tense. Ben exhaled, forcing himself into motion. "All right, buddy. We're not waiting for another ambush." He pulled out a laminated map and laid it flat. "These coordinates here, northern Utah. That's where the final data was sent. Some kind of hidden facility. Off-grid." Rex came closer, nose brushing the map. He let out a short huff and stared at Ben. "You want to go there, don't you?" Ben folded the map and stuffed it into his bag. "Then we move at nightfall." They left at dusk, hiking along the ridge and avoiding any exposed roads. By midnight, they reached a deserted service town near the border. Ben knew a contact there, Jackson, a former medic turned smuggler who owed him a favor. But when they reached the safe house, the door was already ajar. Ben entered first, gun drawn. "Jackson?" The lights were off. No movement. Then Rex stopped cold, his nose to the ground. Whimper. Ben knelt and followed his line of sight. Blood, a smear leading into the kitchen. He stepped inside. Jackson was slumped over the table, eyes glassy, a message carved into his arm. "You're next." Ben clenched his jaw. "They're tracking us faster than expected." He checked the fridge. Untouched. Supplies still there. Whoever killed Jackson hadn't been interested in anything else. Then he saw the window. On the sill sat a silver coin, a military challenge coin, marked with a symbol Ben knew well. Cronus Global. "They're not cleaning house," he whispered. "They're sending a message." Rex growled again, not toward the body, but toward the hallway. Ben whirled, weapon up. Too late. A figure burst from the shadows, masked, armed, fast. Ben fired once. The attacker ducked, rolled, and lunged. But Rex was faster. With a snarl, Rex launched into the air and tackled the man to the ground. The force sent both crashing into the wall. The attacker tried to rise, but Rex had locked onto his arm, teeth buried deep. Ben stepped forward and pulled the mask off. It wasn't just any mercenary. It was one of Whitaker's old unit. Alive, and smiling through the pain. "They're expecting you," he spat. "You're walking into a trap." Ben stared down. "Then why follow us?" "To make sure you show up." Then he bit down hard on something hidden in his cheek. Ben's eyes widened. "No." Too late. The man convulsed. Cyanide. Rex stepped back, panting. Ben knelt and checked his pulse. Gone. He looked at Rex. "They don't just want you dead. They want the story buried, all of it." He grabbed what he could, then lit a match. The safe house burned behind them as they disappeared into the night. One man, one dog, and a secret someone would kill to keep hidden. The wind howled across the Utah Badlands as Ben and Rex pushed forward into the desolate basin, guided only by a fading trail of digital breadcrumbs left behind on Lara's encrypted drive. Each marker took them closer to the coordinates embedded deep in a file titled Sanctum. They had no backup, no line to command, just each other and the truth. They arrived near dawn, perched atop a ridge overlooking what looked like an abandoned mining facility carved into the rock. Old machinery rusted in the open, but the place was anything but deserted. Thermal imaging showed armed guards, drone patrols, and a helipad that didn't belong to any public registry. Rex crouched low, ears flattened. Ben whispered, "It's not just a hideout. This is where they process everything. Weapons, tech, maybe even humans." He pulled out a pair of binoculars. Just past the main loading dock, a cluster of cages, large ones, some empty, some not. German shepherds. Ben's hand clenched around the frame. Rex let out a low whine. Not fear, recognition. "Are those—" Ben paused. "Your unit?" The dogs wore tracking collars and numbered tags. K912, K917, K919, ghosts from the past. They kept them alive. He adjusted the scope. One of the guards appeared to be testing something on one of the dogs. Electric stimulation, forcing behavioral responses. Rex rose halfway, then froze. He wanted to move. He wanted to act. Ben touched his collar. "Not yet, partner." They couldn't storm the place head-on. But they didn't need to. Ben knew terrain. He'd trained for black sites like this, and if there was one thing these facilities always had, it was a back exit, built for deniability. They hiked down under cover of dusk. While guards changed shifts, Ben picked a shadowed path along the drainage ravine. Rusted bars covered a side tunnel, just wide enough for Rex to squeeze through. Ben whispered, "You go in. I'll circle around and meet you at the southwest pen. Free the others. Then we blow it all sky high." Rex didn't move immediately, his eyes locked on Ben's. Not fear, concern. Ben smiled. "You've got this. You're not just a survivor anymore. You're their hope." Rex gave a soft chuff and slipped through. Ben moved fast, skirting the perimeter, planting charges at key support beams. The facility was too dirty to report. It needed to be erased. Inside, Rex crept silently past armed guards. His memory guided him through familiar layouts, kennels, lab rooms, security checkpoints. He ducked under lasers, waited behind corners. When he reached the main kennel area, he stopped. K919 lay still in the far corner of a cage. Scarred. Drugged. Another shepherd, K912, paced in circles, alert but cautious. Rex approached and barked softly. They turned. Recognition lit in their eyes. Then voices. "Who's letting these dogs out?" Boots approached. Rex ducked behind a pillar, ears twitching. 2 guards entered, one carrying a cattle prod. Number 17 showed abnormal behavior. Orders are to sedate and isolate. As the man reached for the lock, Rex launched. He hit with blinding speed, crashing into the guard and knocking the prod loose. Before the second guard could reach his weapon, Rex spun and knocked him flat. The commotion triggered the other dogs. Growls, howls, claws against steel. Rex grabbed the prod, biting down hard and shoving it into the panel. Sparks flew. The locks disengaged. The cages opened. Chaos. The shepherds didn't run. They attacked. Trained soldiers, years forgotten, instincts reawakened. Ben heard the eruption from across the compound. He smiled grimly and triggered the first charge. Boom! The far storage tower erupted into flame. Sirens wailed. He sprinted through the smoke toward the kennel quadrant, blasting a guard with the butt of his rifle. Then he saw them, Rex leading a pack of dogs through the main corridor. Now that's a rescue. Then a shot rang out. Ben dove, dragging Rex behind a crate. He peeked around the corner. Whitaker. Not in uniform, not in command, but standing at the heart of the fire like a man who believed he was still untouchable. "Should have finished that mutt when I had the chance," Whitaker sneered. Rex's fur bristled. Whitaker raised his gun. Ben fired first. The bullet clipped Whitaker's arm, spinning him to the ground. But he scrambled into cover behind a metal desk, bleeding but alive. Sirens screamed louder. Somewhere, a generator began to explode. Fire licked the ceiling. Ben turned to Rex. "We finish this. No loose ends." The dogs had broken out. The evidence was collapsing with the building. But they needed Whitaker, alive or dead. Ben charged, Rex at his side. Whitaker rose with a knife, swinging wildly. Ben blocked with his forearm, grimacing as the blade tore into skin. He countered with a punch to Whitaker's jaw. But Whitaker wasn't done. He grabbed Rex by the collar and tried to drag him back. Mistake. Rex twisted midair, latched onto Whitaker's arm, and pulled him down. Ben kicked the knife away and pinned him. "Why?" Ben demanded. "Why go through all this?" Whitaker laughed through bloody teeth. "Because control is everything. If you can train loyalty, you own nations." Ben stared. "Not anymore." He knocked him out cold. Sirens echoed. The building shook. Ben slung Whitaker over his shoulder, whistled to the dogs, and ran. They burst through the sound. loading dock as the final charges detonated. Fire consumed the base. Smoke rose into the night sky as the last survivors vanished into the desert. They had escaped. For now. But Rex had just declared war. They lay low in a small hunting cabin nestled deep in the Wasatch Mountains, far from the blast site and beyond the reach of any government tracker. The dogs, once captives, now filled the place with tense silence. They didn't bark. They didn't play. They waited. Eyes sharp, ears twitching. Training didn't fade. It was buried, waiting to be called again. Ben sat at the wooden table, wrist wrapped, shoulder bruised from hauling Whitaker out of the compound. The former commander was chained to a pipe in the cellar, unconscious but alive. The others had argued against sparing him. Even Rex had stood motionless, silent as Ben debated it with himself. "You don't fight rot by burying it," he had said to Rex, who eventually gave a quiet grunt and lay down beside him. But now, the fallout began. The explosion made national headlines. Unidentified facility destroyed in remote Utah mountains. No official comment. No suspects. But Ben knew it wouldn't stay quiet for long. Black sites always had strings attached, and some of those strings were wrapped around dangerous men. They had 3 days before the storm came. Ben opened Lara's encrypted drive again. This time, deeper access. Hidden behind layers of firewalls was a name he hadn't expected. Senator Nathan Harwood, formerly head of the Appropriations Defense Subcommittee. Currently retired, quiet, powerful, and the man funding the Ghost program. It wasn't about dogs. It was about control, surveillance, obedience, and eliminating anyone who wouldn't submit. Ben stood and looked at Rex. "We're not done." Rex sat upright, focused. That night, under a cloak of stars, they moved Whitaker to the back of Ben's old Land Cruiser. The man was groggy but alert. "You don't understand what you've done," Whitaker mumbled, lips split, eyes hollow. "Harwood doesn't just erase enemies, he erases entire bloodlines." Ben stared at him through the rearview mirror. "Good thing we're not enemies. We're ghosts." They drove through the back roads of Idaho, up into Montana. There, a journalist waited. Her name was Rachel Kemp, former military, turned investigative. Ben had saved her brother's unit in Kandahar years ago. Now, she owed him. Inside a diner closed for renovations, Rachel listened as Ben laid out everything. The dogs, the lab, the surveillance collars, and Harwood's secret program. She didn't speak for a long time. "You have evidence? More than enough? And a witness?" Ben glanced at the shackled Whitaker. "He'll talk. If not to you, then to a grand jury." Rachel smirked. "He won't need to. The footage from the raid is enough." "You leaked this yet?" Ben shook his head. "You're the first." She reached into her bag and pulled out a burner laptop. "Then let's light a match." While they uploaded files to multiple servers, Rex stood guard by the door, eyes never leaving the parking lot. The other rescued shepherds stayed in the vehicle, calm, waiting. Midnight approached. The files were set to auto-distribute to over 24 press outlets if Rachel didn't cancel the upload within 10 minutes. But before she could hit send, the lights cut out. Ben tensed. Rachel reached for her pistol. Rex growled low. Then, headlights. 3 black SUVs surrounded the diner. Ben cursed. "They found us." "Can we make a run for it?" Rachel asked. "No time." Ben turned to Rex. "You know what to do." The German shepherd bolted into the kitchen and disappeared through the service exit. Ben knew he was going for the Land Cruiser. He had trained Rex for this kind of scenario. Rex would circle wide and return with backup. the other dogs. A loudspeaker crackled outside. "Benjamin Carter, surrender, or we light this place up." Rachel moved toward the back door. "We can escape now." "No, we wait." Seconds ticked. Then, from the trees, movement. Shadows tore across the snow-covered gravel like wolves unchained. Rex led the pack, eyes ablaze, straight into the SUV convoy. One of the men shouted. Too late. The shepherds hit like a hurricane. Tires blew, doors yanked open, guns dropped. Ben and Rachel stormed out the front, taking down 2 of the agents trying to flee. Rachel yanked open the lead SUV's door and found a man in a suit with no ID. Ben dragged him out. "You with Harwood?" The man stayed silent. Rachel showed him the streaming upload screen on her phone. "In 5 minutes, the world sees everything. Talk." The man stared at Rex, who stood with his paw on another agent's chest, pinning him without mercy. He cracked. "Harwood's moving everything to Wyoming. There's another lab. Bigger. Deeper. He's covering tracks." "Where?" The man gave them the coordinates. Rachel sent the files. The first blast of headlines hit within minutes. The storm was coming, but now it would hit both ways. Rex walked back to Ben's side, blood on his fur, eyes clear. Ben whispered, "Good boy." They were ghosts. And now the world would know the truth. Snow blanketed the landscape outside the safe house cabin in Cody, Wyoming, where Ben and Rachel regrouped with Rex and the surviving dogs. Inside, the mood was tense. News of the leaked ghost program had exploded across every major outlet. Protests, inquiries, and furious denials from Capitol Hill dominated headlines. But the deeper truth, the second lab, the real objective, remained buried. Rachel tapped the laptop furiously. "They're moving assets. Fast. Harwood's locking it all down. No paper trail, no funding traces. This guy's been cleaning house for 20 years. Ben leaned against the windowsill, watching Rex pace along the fence line. "He's not running. He's regrouping. You don't erase something that big overnight unless you've done it before." Rachel turned. "And you still think he's in Wyoming?" Ben nodded. "The coordinates that agent gave us, they weren't fake. And if Harwood's smart, he'll keep the lab running just long enough to extract the next prototype." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Prototype?" Ben nodded slowly. Rex wasn't just trained, he was tested. They weren't just building obedience, they were building dependency. Biological, neurological. That's why the dogs broke when separated. They were wired for a command system. Rachel froze. "So you're saying the program isn't just tech? It's biological." They weren't training canines, they were programming soldiers. Rex barked once outside, sharp, urgent. Ben was already moving. He grabbed the radio off the table. "Talk to me." A faint voice crackled through. "Car moving fast. West Ridge. No tags. 3 bodies." Ben looked to Rachel. "That's a sweep team. They're not here to capture." He moved quickly, grabbing his rifle and nodding at Rex, who leapt into the snow with quiet fury. They met the sweep team halfway down the ridge. 3 men in cold-weather tactical gear were sweeping thermal scans across the tree line. Rex got there first. He moved like a phantom through the snow, low and fast. He hit the lead operative behind the knee, knocking him flat before the man even saw him. Before the second could raise his weapon, Ben fired. Clean shot to the shoulder. The third tried to run. Rex pounced and pinned him, growling low, teeth bared inches from the man's neck. Ben marched over and ripped off the man's earpiece. "Who sent you?" The man refused to answer, blood on his lip. Rex didn't move, just stared deeper. "I won't ask twice," Ben said. "Harwood knows." The man hissed. "He knows about the girl." Ben went still. "What girl?" the man sneered. "The one Rex failed to protect. She's not dead. She's bait." Ben stepped back, mind spinning. Rachel arrived just then, panting, snow in her hair. "What happened?" Ben met her eyes. "They've got her. A girl from Rex's unit, a handler. He thinks she died, but they've had her this whole time." Rachel frowned. Why would they lie about that? To control him. Rex stood now, still and focused, as if he had understood every word. Ben whispered, "They've been pulling his strings from the start." Back at the cabin, Rachel brought up Ghost program internal logs she'd decrypted earlier. They showed deployment records, behavioral tests, brain scans, each one tagged with code names. Handler Alpha 09, subject Rex. Then they found it. Hannah Reed. Status, KIA. Location, confidential. Ben leaned over the screen. "That's her." Rachel looked up slowly. "She's not KIA. She's collateral." Ben paced. "They're still using her as leverage, which means Harwood's getting desperate." He turned to Rex. "You're not broken. You were tricked." Rex didn't move, but his eyes burned. By nightfall, they were on the road again, heading south through remote mountain passes toward the lab's supposed location. Rex rode in the front this time, unmoving, ears up, watching every curve in the road. Rachel broke the silence. "If she's alive, do you think he'll know her?" Ben kept his hands on the wheel. "He'll know. A bond like that, it doesn't vanish, not even after everything they tried." Rex stirred, a low growl in his chest. Just then, headlights approached from behind. Fast. Rachel checked the rear view. "We're being tailed." Ben didn't slow. A second vehicle appeared, trying to flank them on the right. "They're boxing us in." Ben slammed the brakes. The Land Cruiser fishtailed into a controlled spin, blocking the narrow pass. He jumped out before it stopped. The first vehicle screeched to a halt. 4 men emerged. But this time, Rex didn't wait for a signal. He charged. He wasn't a pet anymore. He wasn't a project. He was vengeance. In seconds, the fight was over. 3 men were down. The 4th begged for breath. Ben pulled him up by the collar. "Where is she?" The man whimpered. "Underground bunker, off Route 212, near the old ranger station. But it's sealed. You'll never make it in." Rex stood beside him, silent. Ben stared at the man. "We don't need the front door." As the snow thickened around them, the 3 of them, Hunter, journalist, and the German shepherd that would no longer be controlled, set course for the final confrontation. It wasn't just about rescue anymore. It was about redemption. The abandoned ranger station stood like a relic, half swallowed by snow and shadow. Just beyond it, hidden beneath layers of ice and reinforced concrete, was the underground facility Ben had been chasing for over a decade. The place where Rex had been made, and where Hannah Reed, his handler, was allegedly still alive. Ben scanned the area through binoculars. "No movement, no patrols. That's not good." Rachel adjusted the earpiece she'd modified from the seized sweep gear. "That means they've gone dark. Whatever's happening down there, they don't want anyone seeing it." Rex was already ahead, nose close to the ground, ears twitching. He stopped at a barely visible metal hatch half buried in the snow. He whined once, then stepped back. Ben knelt beside it. "This is it." Rachel pulled out a signal disruptor. "Give me 60 seconds. As she worked, Ben looked at Rex. "You sure about this?" Rex didn't look away. He was ready. With a hiss and a click, the hatch released. Cold air poured out from below, unnaturally still. Ben dropped in first, rifle raised. Rachel followed, and Rex leapt down silently after them, landing like a shadow. The corridor was sterile, clinical, too clean. Lights flickered overhead. It was silent except for the distant hum of machinery. They moved swiftly, passing storage rooms, medical labs, and testing chambers, each one more horrific than the last. Dog cages with no dogs, monitors still glowing with vitals that no longer pulsed. A board listing cognitive synchronization tests with unit, Rex and handler. H. Reed scribbled next to redacted results. Rachel's breath caught. This was never just training. They were experimenting on their connection. Ben nodded grimly, trying to weaponize the bond itself. Suddenly, Rex froze. His head turned sharply left. He growled, low, guttural. Ben followed his gaze. At the end of the hallway, behind a reinforced observation window, was a small room. Inside, barely conscious, hooked to an IV, was a young woman. "Hannah," Ben whispered. Rex barked once. Sharp and desperate, Rachel moved quickly, accessing the panel beside the door. "It's coded. Biometric scan only." Ben didn't wait. He stepped back and fired. The reinforced glass cracked but held. Again. Again. It didn't budge. Rachel pulled a flash drive from her vest and plugged it into the control panel. "This should override their lockdown protocol." Ben turned to Rex. "Stay with her. Don't move." Rex sat beside the glass, whining softly. Inside, Hannah stirred. Her hand moved weakly. She turned her head, eyes fluttering open. The moment she saw Rex, everything in her body changed. Her mouth trembled. "Rex!" He pressed his head to the glass. Then the facility lights cut out. A siren wailed. The panel beside Rachel sparked violently. "Someone's here," she hissed. Footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor. Not boots, heels. A woman appeared, dressed in black tactical gear, platinum hair tied back. She smiled coldly. "Impressive you made it this far," she said. "But this reunion is over." Ben raised his rifle. "You must be Harwood's fixer." She tilted her head. "You can call me Eve. And you're trespassing on classified grounds." She drew a silenced pistol and fired without warning. Rachel dove, narrowly missing a bullet to the neck. Ben fired back, driving Eve behind cover. Rex growled. Loud. He turned. Backed up. Then, like a bullet, he charged at the glass. Crash! The window shattered, shards flying. Ben shouted, "Rex, no!" But it was too late. Rex was already beside Hannah, licking her face, nudging her awake. She weakly lifted a hand to touch his head. Rachel screamed. "We have to move!" Ben covered them, returning fire as Eve advanced, methodical and lethal. Rex barked and nudged Hannah's side. She tried to rise, but her legs collapsed. "I've got her," Rachel said, rushing in. She grabbed Hannah under one arm. Rex took the other, almost carrying her on his back. "Fall back!" Ben ordered, laying down suppressive fire. They reached the elevator shaft. The elevator was dead. Rachel clipped a harness to Hannah and lowered her with Rex beside her. Ben descended last. As they emerged into the snowstorm, gunfire echoed behind them. Eve appeared at the mouth of the shaft, her pistol trained. Ben turned mid-run and fired a single perfect shot. She dropped. Rex barked, triumphant. They reached the truck. Rachel jumped in first, helping Hannah into the back seat. Ben started the engine. Rex didn't wait for the door to open. He leapt through the open window. As the wheels tore away from the ranger station, flames burst behind them. Rachel had rigged a timed charge. Hannah coughed weakly. "You came back." Ben smiled through the rear view. "No," he did. Rex licked her hand gently, eyes never leaving her face. She smiled, tears running silently down her cheek. And for the first time in years, Rex closed his eyes and rested. But they weren't safe yet. The ghost program might be burning, but some ghosts don't die easily. The safe house was nothing more than a worn-down cabin deep in the Montana wilderness, the kind of place not even satellites cared to remember. Ben paced the room, boots tracking mud across old floorboards, while Rachel hooked up IV fluids to Hannah, who lay wrapped in 3 blankets on the couch. Her breathing was shallow but stable. Rex sat beside her, unmoving, guarding. His ears twitched at every creak in the walls. "She's lucky to be alive," Rachel whispered, voice low. "But she's been through something more than just drug sedation. That kind of programming, it doesn't just go away." Ben looked over. "You mean brainwashing?" Rachel nodded. "She's still in there, but they tried to bury her under layers of protocols. You saw how she responded to Rex. He's the one anchor they couldn't touch." Rex leaned forward and licked Hannah's hand gently. Her fingers twitched. "She'll need time," Ben said. "We don't have it," Rachel snapped. She turned the laptop toward him. On screen was an intercepted feed. Surveillance footage from the remnants of the underground facility. Harwood, alive, wounded, but directing cleanup crews. And he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a tall man with a familiar scar over his left eye. Ben froze. "Derek Shaw." Rachel nodded grimly. "He's back. He didn't die in Kabul." Ben clenched his fists. Shaw was more than a rogue operative. He was a butcher in uniform. Years ago, Ben had testified against him after a covert op went south. Shaw vanished before sentencing. Now, he was standing beside Harwood like a ghost reborn. "They're planning something. Big," Rachel said. "The files in the facility were mostly wiped, but I recovered one fragment. Codename Thanatos Protocol. It involves Rex." Ben looked at Rex. The dog was now pacing, sensing the tension. "Whatever it is," Ben said, "they're not done with this program. Or with Rex." Outside, the wind howled. Snow whipped against the windows. And then, Rex growled. Rachel looked up. "What?" Rex bolted to the door and barked, twice, sharp, urgent. Ben grabbed his rifle, moved to the window. 2 black SUVs approached through the trees, headlights off. Silent. "We've been made," he said. Rachel grabbed the laptop, yanked the power cord. "EMP signature?" Ben nodded. "Probably a drone overhead picked us up through heat signature. We move, now!" He ran to Hannah, slinging her gently over his shoulder as Rachel gathered gear. Rex stayed at Ben's side, tail stiff, body ready. The back door exploded inward. A flashbang rolled into the room. Rex reacted first, charging toward the device and throwing his body over it just before detonation. The room shook, but the blast was muffled. When the smoke cleared, Rex was staggering, ears ringing, but upright. "Go!" Rachel screamed. Ben kicked open the back wall, which had been weakened for an emergency exit. They barreled into the woods. Rachel covered their rear while Rex flanked, guiding Ben through the path he seemed to know instinctively. A bullet whizzed past Ben's head. Another cracked into a tree inches from Rachel. Voices shouted behind them. Orders. Thermal goggles. "We need to split up," Ben said. "They'll target Hannah and Rex." Rachel didn't argue. She handed him a flare. 15 minutes. Meet at Ridge Point. If I'm not there, keep moving." Rex whined as Rachel ran off, drawing fire. Ben moved in the opposite direction, feet crunching in snow, heart pounding. Minutes later, a shape dropped from the trees in front of him. It was Shaw. "You look older, Ben," Shaw said, pistol raised. "But then ghosts don't age." Ben lowered Hannah gently to the ground. Rex moved in front of her, baring teeth. "You're working with Harwood now?" Ben asked. Shaw shrugged. "He funds me. I do the dirty work." "You always did." Shaw smirked. You know what Thanatos is, right? It's death, Ben. The end of choice. The program you shut down. It was just the beginning. And this, he nodded at Rex. He's the prototype. Perfect control. Until you broke him. Rex snarled. Shaw raised his pistol. Ben moved. The two men collided, grappling in the snow. The gun discharged once, then twice. Ben slammed his elbow into Shaw's ribs, ducked a knife swipe, and drove his knee into the scarred face. Shaw stumbled back. Then Rex launched. He hit Shaw mid-chest, teeth sinking into his shoulder. The man screamed, fired once into the air, then again into Rex's side. "No!" Ben shouted. Rex held firm, dragging Shaw down, thrashing. Ben grabbed the pistol and ended it, one shot to the head. Shaw fell still. Ben dropped to Rex's side. Blood stained the snow. "Stay with me, buddy. Don't you dare give up now." Rex licked his hand, then rested his head on Hannah's legs. Rachel appeared seconds later, breathless. "Truck's waiting at the trailhead." Ben nodded, lifting Rex gently. Rachel took Hannah. As they reached the ridge, dawn broke over the horizon. Bloody, battered, but not broken. They kept moving. Behind them, Harwood's operation burned. But ahead, the truth waited, and Rex, wounded or not, would lead the charge. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beeping of machines. Rex lay curled on a mat beside the bed, a fresh bandage wrapping his midsection. His fur had been shaved where the bullet had torn through. He was alert but still weak, breathing slow and deliberate. Hannah sat upright in the bed now, eyes clearer than they had been in weeks. Her hand rested on Rex's head, stroking gently. She hadn't said much since the escape, but she hadn't let Rex out of her sight either. Ben stood near the window, staring out at the overcast sky. Rachel typed quickly on a laptop at the table, finishing the last piece of evidence to be submitted to the Department of Justice. They had made it, but it wasn't over. Rachel looked up. "Harwood's being indicted. The documents we leaked, along with the footage from the facility, were enough to open a federal investigation." "And Shaw?" Ben asked without turning. "Body recovered? Confirmed dead. And the other mercenaries are in custody. Some were former black ops, others paid-off contractors. The program is finished." Ben nodded slowly. "That's what they said 10 years ago." Rachel closed the laptop. "This time, the world's watching. And we've got something we didn't have before." She looked down at Rex. "A witness." Rex looked up at her, tail thumping once. 2 weeks later, the town of Red River gathered in the local park. The mayor stood on the small stage, flanked by officials and a modest news crew. Flags fluttered in the breeze. "And now," the mayor announced, "we honor the unlikely hero of a story that has touched millions around the world." He gestured. Rex walked slowly up the platform, escorted by Ben. The German shepherd stood tall, despite the slight limp. A new tag hung around his neck. Not military, not police, just his name. Rex. The crowd erupted in applause. Children clapped. Some cried. Hannah stood front row with Rachel, her face glowing. The mayor knelt and pinned a medal to Rex's vest. "For bravery beyond instinct, for loyalty beyond training, and for saving lives when others tried to take them." Rex didn't bark. He didn't need to. He simply stood. And the world saw a soldier, a protector, a survivor. Later that evening, back at the small cabin Ben now called home, Rex lay on the porch as the sun dipped behind the mountains. Hannah threw a tennis ball lazily into the grass. Rex fetched it and brought it back without hesitation. Ben sat on the steps, a beer in hand, watching the two. "They wanted to turn him into a weapon," Rachel said, stepping beside him. "But he became something better." Ben nodded. "He became family." Rachel smiled. So, what now? Ben looked at her. We stay quiet. Stay ready. And if anything like that ever surfaces, again, Rex lifted his head at the sound of Ben's voice. We make damn sure they don't get away with it. Rachel tilted her head. And the footage? Ben smirked. Already out there. People have a right to know, to believe that dogs like Rex aren't just property. They're partners, warriors, friends. The wind carried the sound of a screen door creaking. Hannah called out, Dinner's ready? Ben rose and whistled. Come on, hero. Rex trotted inside, tail swaying. The screen door shut behind them, and with it, a chapter of pain closed. For good. But the message remained. Never underestimate the silent ones, the broken ones, the ones who were left behind. Sometimes they come back to save us all. Do you believe in second chances, in loyalty that never fades? Share your story in the comments. And if Rex moved you the way he moved millions, subscribe to the German Shepherd channel. Join our community. Honor these incredible companions.